first started playing music when I was a little kid. I wrote my first song for my second grade teacher. I had an uncle who was an acoustic guitar flat picker in a country band, and he would come over to the house and have his guitar with him, and I'd noodle around with it. And I realized I had some talent for it. And one day I took my guitar into school and played a song for my class, and everybody clapped. And for a little kid, I guess that can be kind of addictive. I liked feeling like I was special, like I was good at something. So I got into it and stayed with it my whole life. My family was heavily involved in church, and a lot of the music that I was exposed to was, church music. We were Southern Baptist, so I knew a lot of hymns and sang in the youth choir and so on. My sister played piano. My mom played a little guitar and piano, and my grandmother played piano, and my uncle was a professional musician. So, it was a little bit of it in my family. But what I was exposed to early was, a lot of folk music, Kingston Trio and Peter, Paul and Mary and stuff like that, and church music. And then one day my sister brought home an album called Meet the Beatles, and everything changed. Well, what I heard in that music was just an energy and a passion that I hadn't heard in any of the other music that I'd been listening to. And it's funny, I go back to the old folk music that I used to listen to as a little kid. Now that I understand it and can play it, I see the energy and passion in it. But for a kid listening to the Beatles, it was just undeniable. It was just crazy, hot energy, just really a turn on. And from there, into the Doors and the other bands that came out after the Beatles as I got older. And so I just got completely launched into the rock and roll world. Music is continually fascinating because it's like a puzzle that you can never completely solve. It's like a question that never has only one correct answer. It's very analytical, like science, but it's also very subjective, like art. So it just has elements of mystery and surprise and beauty that I just never get tired of. As far as live performance, talk about just an edge of your seat experience. The feedback loop between the performer and the audience, and just the spontaneity of things that happen. Even when I'm playing by myself, sometimes somebody will yell out a song that I've never played. I think I know it well enough, and I'll give it a shot. And it's just that adrenaline rush of connecting with people and making them happy, and them in turn making me happy, and it just becomes a big love fest, and everybody's happy.
Yeah,
I play a lot of shows. I probably play 150 or so shows a year. And a lot of them are little bar band shows or little lounge gigs that I play by myself. But they're still enjoyable and fascinating because even when you're playing a song that you've played, a couple of hundred times, there's still, you reach a point where you're not thinking about what your hands are doing. Your hands are doing their own thing. It is muscle memory, but it's deeper than that. And with this familiarity, you actually can open your mind up to experimentation and playing these tunes a different way, or maybe finding a chord voicing that you didn't try before. Lately, I've been in love with taking tunes that I've played for a long time and playing them as samba. Just changing the groove. Like you might take a song and play it as a reggae, or you might take an R&B tune and play it as a shuffle. But there's all different kinds of ways you can play with this material when you know it very intimately. Like I know the James Taylor material, for example. You can kind of take it and just turn it a little bit and make it a little bit different, a little bit fresh, a little bit new. Sure, and you know, we're talking about familiarity with material, but some of my most amazing moments have come with people that I've never played with before, that I've never heard the material that I'm playing, and basically listening and improvising. And it's kind of an advanced skill, I guess, for a musician to listen and play at the same time. But it goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. You're so familiar with your instrument, you reach a point where you can almost divide your brain in half. One half is playing and reacting to the music you're hearing, and the other half is listening and analyzing and you know, planning your next move. And you know, I've had some great moments at the Kerrville Folk Festival. You know, it's got invited on stage with Ellis Paul, and I'd never played with him before, and played his whole set with him. And afterwards, he asked me if I would marry him. So, you know, some magical moments will happen. Oh, sorry, I'm already taken.
That's good. Something like that was great.
You know, we all wear lots of different hats. As a songwriter, my highest aspiration is to just create one fine, beautiful song, one perfect song. I think that's everybody's aspiration as a songwriter. But as a performer, you know, as a frontman, or as a singer who's directly relating to the audience, you know, your highest aspiration is to make the experience for the audience as pure as possible, to give them the best version of the song you can give them. As a guitar player, you know, it's once again, in the show that I'm doing with Strings Attached this weekend, I'm going to be doing some of my own compositions in the first set. And so I'll be wearing the songwriter hat, I'll be wearing the guitar player hat, the lead singer / frontman hat, and you know, all of those are important, and they're all part of this many-faceted thing that we put together to present to the audience to give them a great experience. When I get in front of an audience, usually the first thing that goes through my head is, gee, I hope my fly is on. No. When I'm up in front of an audience, a lot of things are going through my mind. I usually have a rough idea of what song I'm going to play, or what songs in what order. And I'll be thinking about, you know, what's the mood in the room? Is this song going to work? How's my energy? Am I capable of performing this well right now? I'm also thinking in a technical way, is my guitar in tune? Is my equipment set up properly? And that should have all been taken care of, so that when I get up there I can just be a pure presenter of the song. But probably, you know, once I get through all that, and that can take nanoseconds, usually I will look for someone to perform to. And usually it's a specific person. Sometimes it's someone I know, like if I have a friend in the crowd. Sometimes I'll perform to them to take away the pressure of having to perform to this huge group. And then by the time I perform to them for about 30 seconds, the rest of the crowd is already in. And then I've started with that pressure gone, so then it can only go up from there. You know, sometimes it works, sometimes not so much, but at least I have a nice intimate moment with my friend or the person that I've chosen. And then I'll do what I call walking around the room. I'll find people in the crowd that interest me for one reason or another, and I'll look at them for certain sections of the song and try to distribute my energy through eye contact and the focal point of my voice projecting. Try to include them, bring them into my energy space. So, you know, it all sounds very complicated, but these are thoughts that are happening lightning fast, you know, while you're performing. and you just move from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and thoughts are happening simultaneously. And on those magic nights, it all comes together, and it works. So and that's beautiful. Well, I like working with strings attached for several different reasons. Probably my favorite thing about working with Will and the guys is that when you come in, they invite you in, and they don't ask you to be something that you're not. They let you work to your strengths. You know, Will understands my strengths, and he kind of gives me parts that are going to help me show my very best. And I think that's true with all of the musicians that he chooses to work with. And they're all, you know, national caliber players, just wonderful players. And playing with Will is, you know, he's just a master of improvisation, master arranger. And conceptually, the material that's chosen. Some of the shows that I've worked on with Will include Pink Floyd, Peter Gabriel, Paul Simon, Joni Mitchell, of course James Taylor. We did an album recreation of Dark Side of the Moon. It was, Out Under the Stars at Threadgill's was one of the most amazing nights I've had in Austin. Just an incredible show. But what happens is what I was talking about before about performing and connecting with the audience. Not only are we connecting with the audience now, we're connecting with each other. We're listening to each other, we're sharing energy, and bundling it together and pushing it out to the audience. And then the audience is pushing it back to us. And it's just this beautiful volleyball game of energy and love, you know. So it's when you come to see Strings Attached, that's what you get. That's what I always get when I come to play with them, and that's why I always keep coming back. James Taylor, wow. You know, obviously an icon. A whole generation of people became fascinated with him, with his music. And, you know, I remember listening to him when I was in junior high school. I've continued to listen to him all through his career. His music is fascinating to me on many levels. A lot of people think of him as a folk singer. Definitely not. He's an outstanding musician. Takes his melodies and his chord progressions and his subject matter wherever he wants to go. And he's also a fantastic guitarist. I often say that I had to become a good guitarist because that was the only way I was going to be able to play James Taylor songs. So I've had a long and happy relationship with James Taylor's music. And what we were talking about before about familiarity being liberating. You know, I know this material so intimately that I can take it places that maybe others wouldn't be able to. Another thing about James Taylor that I've found fascinating is that throughout my life as a young student, and then as a young man, and then as an older man, my spiritual journey has kind of paralleled James Taylor's spiritual journey. I've found myself relating to him at many different stages of his life through his music and some of the choices that he's made. You know, I'm glad that he survived being a young man who was frivolous with experimenting with drugs, and I'm glad that he came into his own and started a family and became a Buddhist, and it continues to work toward becoming an enlightened being. And I can kind of see the parallel in my own life, you know, where I started out as more of a selfish and self-serving young man, and as I've grown through my life, I've tried to become a more spiritual being. And I think that's another reason why I've stayed with James Taylor's music for so many years, just because I've always been able to relate to him at the various stages of his life. One of the things I love about James Taylor's is the way he doesn't just play he doesn't just give you three chords and the truth. It's an expression that we use a lot for folk singers. He's giving you a lot more than that. You know, as a guitar player, approaching his songs, I mean, something like, here's a very recognizable James Taylor lick. Right? So, you know, what you have there is, it's the beginning of Fire and Rain. You have the root chord, the minor 5, the 4, the 7 chord. You know, there's a lot more going on there than just 3 chords. And also his use of bass notes. You know, he's a finger picker. I use a flat pick, so I had to kind of create a hybrid style where I use my pick along with my fingers to kind of simulate what he does. You know, but I kind of get the same effect doing it that way. And let's see, what's another good example? Oh, he's got, how about Sunny Skies? I love the way he plays his rhythms. And once again, he does a lot of finger picking, but I use a flat pick along with my fingers, like so. I think this comes from James Taylor starting out as a solo performer. You kind of have to simulate having a bass guitar and a drum kit. So you kind of have to create those rhythms on your own. So he developed a style of kind of countering. It's sort of the same thing he does on Shower the People, where he goes... that tune, he's giving you the chord progression, but he's also giving you the nice bass line, right? So his music is, it's beautiful, yes, and I can relate to it, yes, and it's lyrically, poetically beautiful also, yes, but he's also an amazing guitar player and pretty amazing composer. Well, as a songwriter, you could argue that James Taylor has been my single biggest influence. I find all the time I'll be listening back to one of my songs and I'll hear a little bit of James in there, and or somebody will ask me, "Where did you get that particular lick from?" And, you know, probably stole it from somebody, but more than likely it was James Taylor. But he kind of taught me the value of the bass note as opposed to just playing a simple chord. You know, moving the bass notes around can really work for you. Let's see if I can. It helps the song by, you know, in my opinion, I think movement is more interesting than stillness. I think tension and release, just like any kind of art, when you like in drama, when you have two characters that are in a conflict, you know, in music or as a songwriter, when you write a melody or progression, you can have chords that are that create tension or conflict, and then that conflict is resolved, and the result is from an intake of breath to, you know, I use these techniques in my writing, and also my lyric writing. You know, I like to write what I call photo album songs, like James Taylor does. A lot of times he'll. It's more important to him to draw a picture of what he's looking at than to tell you a specific story about something that happened. He wants to put you in a scene and evoke an emotion or evoke a response. And also a lot of his guitar style is translated into my work as well. Like, you know, stuff like that just kind of, it doesn't roll right off my fingers. I have to think about it and compose it, but I find it much more interesting than, you know, I could play the same progression like. You know, I find the way that I play it, the first way that I played it, strikes me as much more interesting and entertaining.
Oh.
Of course.
Of course. Come on in. Oh, man. You got some mail for us? Who's here? Here.
No, this
Okay.
is not my mail.